Shut up, compressor. Okay, so after staying up way too late last night working on the gloss sea blue and building in the undercoating for the Helo Drab, we're back at it tonight playing with the Helo Drab side of things, and I think I've got a nice, very varied coat going on here with all kinds of different stuff happening, and now I want to start taking this back toward green. I mean, we've got the Helo Drab that's gonna have to go on top of this, and this is fantastic, but I maybe want to rein it in just a little bit in places and start adding that real green tone into it that'll also pull through in this. So what am I going to use for that? Well, let's see what we got here. So the one I'm really leaning towards is good old SEA dark green. Another option that I think might be too dark because it's pretty close tonally to the Helo Drab is this Warsaw Pact gray or olive green. You know, they're of a kind. Maybe a bit more intense than I want. So probably this SEA dark green. You know, you can see it's got enough tonal difference to where it can hold its own and provide that green uplift without being overkill. I'm also probably going to work in some dark tones because if you look at a lot of various weathered helicopters, they have not only the faded and beat to shit and worn down finish, but they also have areas of touch up where the Helo Drab is much fresher and much darker. So for that, I might pull in something like, you know, tired black to just give me a nice dark uniform area in a couple of different places. So with that, let's get to painting. Okay, so moving right along with the Helo Drab, next shade we're going to put down is good old olive drab. You remember that Helo Drab is one of those colors that very definitely fades out, gets dirty, all that good stuff. So unlike dealing with gloss sea blue, there's no issue with putting lighter tones underneath it. See, we're building in a nice beaten up coat. Olive Drab makes a good base for this. But we definitely want to keep in mind that we're going to have other colors coming in here. So just a little. All right, now we're going to switch to another color, so hold tight. Okay, so next, because we're going for a battered, seen better days Helo Drab, we're going to add a little bit of light green gray to the mix. Okay, where do we want to put this? Okay, next color out to play, zinc chromate primer. very, very little bit of this in places. The idea here is at the end of this, when we blend it all, we want the notion that we've got some primer peeking through the paint. So nothing too fancy. Now we're going to put on a little bit of this tire black. And we're also going to go for this one end panel right here. One more quick flush, and then we're on to the Helo Drab. Okay, so now it's time to lay down the Helo Drab. And for that, I've put a little bit into this tattoo ink cup and added a few drops of Mr. Leveling Thinner to make it a little bit more transparent. Give us a little bit more range as we build it up. All right, here we go. Okay, so I just finished putting down the blend coat of Helo Drab, and I have to say I'm not quite as happy with this one as I was hoping to be. The reason I think is I've broken essentially what's coming to be a, I don't want to call it a rule, I mean this is a very damn flexible platform, but I've broken what seems to be a guideline, a tendency, whatever it is, with black basing, of putting lighter stuff underneath a darker color. It takes more effort to cover, and because of that tends to blow out some of the work that you're doing. The reason on the glossy blue, for example, that we stuck with dark warm tones as opposed to going into like lighter stuff is to keep that, keep that effect in there where the lightest color going on is in effect everything. It's the, the glossy blue is not particularly darker than what's underneath it. With the Helo Drab, I definitely went against that with colors like light gray green and zinc chromate primer. I mean, I'd probably honestly still put the primer under there just because that's fun to have peeking through a little bit. But I think I probably should have been a bit more diligent about putting darker colors under the Helo Drab, and B, fading out the Helo Drab where I wanted it to represent that fade. It's, you can do a little bit of that in the blend coat or in the marble coat, but it really comes into play in the blend coat if you want to depict something that has literally been sun faded. So here is the result. I don't think it's terrible. I think it, it definitely shows. Why is it getting so damn bright? There's definitely variation going on in here, and you can see here where I went ahead and lightened a few patches so that this panel right in here, this aileron, have, I went over with a lightened blend coat, and I don't think that really helps. It would have helped in actually painting the full blend coat if I had had, more Helo Drab and various other dark tones in here, dark greens and browns and things like that, to support it. So it's a good lesson learned, though. Messing up a darker color and fading it out requires definitely its own approach. So don't do this. Don't put all the light colors underneath and then, spray it and wonder what the fuck happened. My recommendation for something like a Helo Drab would be stick to dark colors, just like what we did over here with the Glossy Blue. Stick with dark colors and build those up. And then if you want something lighter and broken, essentially, on top, build that into the blend coat side of things instead. So lighten up the Helo Drab, mix blends with Helo Drab and other things. I mean, even honestly, maybe some of this wouldn't hurt, throwing it into the pile there. But yeah, I mean, that's frustrating, but it's a great lesson to learn when dealing with these dark colors and what works and what doesn't. So just to restate it again, to, if nothing else, drive it home into my own damn head. When you're working with dark tones, putting light colors underneath can kind of fuck you. You can have a few here and there if you want them to really show through, but as you can see in the video when I was doing the blend coat, the light tones really tend to grab and throw off the shade of the blend coat, and so you have to blend more. And when you blend more, you end up obscuring things, and you get something a bit more monochromatic than you were necessarily going for. So essentially, a good, God, I hate to say a rule, a good thing to consider when you're doing this is the idea of going from dark and building towards that lighter shade. I put paints all over my stupid chart. So another way to think about it is to go back to the chart that we made. You got the black on the one side and the white on the other side, and essentially we're playing in this range here, and with the marble coat we started putting in stuff that was here, and so the blend coat was bouncing between this, and we had to pull it back this way, which buried a lot of this stuff. So essentially you want to play in this range, black and close to black and really, really dark green, maybe like an RLM 70 even, and things like that, and work those in here, and then put, if Helo Drab is sitting right here, maybe do some lightened versions of Helo Drab that are up here, and use those to bring in the blend and get in that exact contrast range that you want, and still have decent marbling going on, and decent variation, but not not having to suffer light colors really messing up the blend coat when you're moving into that phase. So good lesson learned, and even so, even if you're just painting Helo Drab over black, it still looks really nice. It just maybe isn't what it could have been. And I'm still pretty happy with how this Glossy Blue turned out. Honestly, I'm happier with this than I was on the Dauntless that I built last year. So that's dark colors. The good rule of thumb to keep in mind when you're building these things up is start with black, stick with dark, and build towards, this top coat that you're putting on should be ideally your lightest coat, lightest color shade, and that will help maintain that contrast variation you're going for. And then, mess up the tones and everything like that to balance it out. So, reds, browns, blues, whatever you want to throw in there to keep things tonally interesting. Think of it sort of like a reverse dot filter, where with dot filters you put down those different colors to subtly mess with things. I would also recommend on both of these, this is not where things stop. This is the first step. This is getting the paint down. After this, you have markings. After this, you have weathering. And there's a lot of room in both of these for oils to come into play to really define what the final surface looks like. You've got foot traffic, you've got dust, you've got staining, you've got very subtle shifts that you want to build in on top of the main coats. So by all means, pay attention to that and don't think, oh, I've just painted this, I can stop now. This is the first step. So anyway, that is dark coats. We're going to move on to some more fun demo stuff, and hopefully it will be a bit more rewarding than what we got out of the Helo Drab. So thanks as always for watching, and if you've gotten this far, my congratulations. We'll be back with another in the Black Basing 201 series soon. Thanks. Bye.